Access to information should never be blocked. If you call yourself a liberal democracy, the means should always justify the ends, and that's why democracies exist.
What is Article 370?
Well, Article 370 is a part of the Indian Constitution to provide a special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as a result of which many of the laws passed by the Indian Parliament are not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
The Indian government just overturned Article 370. Can you walk me through what were the motivations on the part of the Indian government in overturning Article 370?
The kind of special status that it provided to Jammu and Kashmir prevented the people from enjoying all the fruits of the laws that had been passed by the Indian Parliament, like the Right to Information, the Prevention of Corruption Act, the Right to Education, the prevention or prohibition of child marriage, and so on and so forth, were not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Recently, the Indian government overturned Article 370. What does that mean for Kashmir?
India claims that now Kashmir is completely integrated with India. And what has really happened in the aftermath of this is severe curtailment of information. The use of disinformation, propaganda, debunking of data is something that the Modi government has done consistently. We are constantly fighting to establish facts against the Modi government's opinion.
Why was this overturned now?
Everybody knew that if this government comes back with a requisite majority, which they did, they were going to revoke or the special status provided for by this article.
You specialize in national security issues, and days before this move, tourists and pilgrims were actually told to leave the area because of a potential national security threat. Do you know what that threat was?
Well, probably had specific information that plans were afoot to once again attack that and to sort of create a scare. So that is one of the reasons why additional troops were rushed there.
500,000 troops are already in this region, and the Indian state already has bought in another 35,000 troops. What we're really seeing is a creation of climate of fear, and Kashmiris are both angry and upset, and many of them don't even know what's really happening on the ground.
There have also been reports that hundreds, potentially thousands of Kashmiri politicians, activists, journalists have been arrested, and their family members have been placed under house arrest under the Public Safety Act. Why was that necessary?
This is done as a preventive measure. When any change takes place, especially where a state was used to certain privileges, certain special status, and you take that away, then it can potentially cause public outcry and civic protest. And so this has been done as a preventive measure to ensure that there is no loss of life and property. And gradually, these restrictions are being lifted. You would have heard that the schools have been opened, the telephone services are being installed gradually, internet services are being restored. It will be done gradually. We've
seen a communications ban, a curfew, arrests, and the movement of Indian troops into the area. Why? What is the purpose of these steps?
So one is curtailment of protest. The second, the information blockade, does two things. One, it makes it impossible for information to come out of Kashmir, and it also makes it absolutely easy for the Indian state to be the only source of what's happening. And finally, curfews, historically, whether it's in Kashmir, whether it's in other parts of the world, are also used as a discipline and punish tactics, where you completely demoralize a population and you punish them for their resistance.
If you say that this is a good thing for the people of Kashmir, why were all these steps necessary, and why do you think people there are upset?
Because there's always a small minority who will instigate others because they're going to lose their privileges.
We spoke to someone from the National Security Advisory Board in India, and when we asked about the motivations behind overturning Article 370, and he talked about certain rights that Kashmiri people did not have that they will now have access to. He viewed it as a very positive thing for the Kashmiri people.
Economist Jean Derez put out the actual stats on development. Gujarat, which was run by the current Prime Minister when he was a Chief Minister, and compared Gujarat with Kashmir. And what we consistently see is that Kashmir actually does much better than Gujarat and rest of India. The women in Kashmir have better access to primary care. In every developmental count, Kashmir actually does much better than the state in Gujarat.
Why should people here in the U.S. and why should the international community pay attention to this?
India and Pakistan are both nuclear power. In case something happens, they're going to bring the world to a brink of a nuclear disaster. And if not that, we should also think about the ramification of what happens when you deprive 8 million people in a region of their right to decide what's happening. What is this idea of India? If you're supposed to be democratic and free and secular, then allow people to decide what they want. It's not an American issue, it's not a Kashmiri issue, it's a global issue of rights and freedoms.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.